Rivers do not drink their own water. Trees do not eat their own fruit. The sun does not shine on itself, and flowers do not spread their fragrance for themselves. Living for others is a rule of nature. We are all born to help each other. No matter how difficult it is, life is good when you are happy, but much better when others are happy because of you.
Good morning. It is the 14th of March 2023. Thank you for finding time to be with us this morning. Here are the headlines from across the continent of Africa. We start with the newspapers from Kenya. The Daily Nation, the deal that saved Matiang'i 4 days after a meeting between 3 MPs and President William Ruto brokered a ceasefire. The Directorate of Public Prosecutions yesterday declared the former Cabinet Secretary a free man, saying he had no case to answer. The story is on page 6 and 7 on the Daily Nation. Sitting on wealth, survey shows 970 minerals across the country. Kenya is literally sitting on immense underground wealth of some 970 minerals, which have been classified as potential prospects for further exploration. The story is on page 10, and there's a breakdown on where some of these minerals have been discovered across the country. Coltan has been found in Kora Wells in Isiolo County, and then also in Kiriti in Embu County, in Homa Bay as well, in West Pokot, and in Tinderet, Nandi County, and Buru in Kericho County. And we also do have some graphite that has been discovered in Kiambere, in Duruma, Tana River, and also in Kanzitu in Kitui County. And iron has also been discovered in Ikutha, Kitui County, and manganese in Kilifi County and Archers Post in Samburu County. And also apparently we do have some copper now in Kitui County, Makindu in Makueni County, and Tsavo in Taita Taveta. Okay. New KPA boss pledges to put workers first. That story is on page 12. Azimio senators plot to paralyze business. You'll find that on page 6. That to pick bill. Kenya Power omits breakdown of charges. Kenyans will no longer be given a detailed breakdown of their power bills after Kenya Power stopped giving customers details of individual pass-through cost. That story is on the back page on the Daily Nation. Very well, let's look at the Standard newspaper. Matiang'i case, the intrigues as the DPP was arriving at the conclusion to drop charges against former Interior CS. A flurry of meetings were taking place to manage the goosey politics. That story you'll find on page 4. Families flee bandit areas as LSK slums move. You'll find that on page 8. Fertilizer cost higher than promised. Well, a story is on page 20. Magical Kenya Open lives up to its billing. That is on the sports pages on page 38, and we shall look at the details of that in just a short while. Pope open to priest getting married. Well, that story is on page 3. The Star newspaper, how ex-CS Matiang'i escaped DCI's news. There was also fear of Kisii region rebelling against President William Ruto's regime. The story is on page 4 and 5. CS Owalo woos 28 former Nyanza politicians into Ruto's UDA party. Controversy over Muranga's bank robbers. Were they executed? Because I think the police showed a photo of them. I don't know if it's the police. having been arrested, and the next you know, the bodies are lying there. So anyway, that is the main pictorial on the Star newspaper. 2 billion Kenya shillings expenditure while Afya House bosses are in trouble with auditors, and Metro Trans fights to retain pickup drop off along Tomboya Street. You'll find that inside the Star newspaper. Okay, so from Nigeria, the Guardian newspaper, Buhari absolves self as CBN finally obeys Supreme Court order. The Nation, CBN okays 1,500 old Naira notes after Buhari's rebuke. And the Punch, MFEL finally bows to pressure, says old Naira notes legal tender. The ridiculousness that goes on in some of these countries is just incredibly amazing. We'll just look at that story in more detail. The News Times, this is from Rwanda. 2,000 delegates to attend FIFA Congress in Kigali. Kagame comments BioNTech group partnership. It's quite interesting, 2,000 delegates to attend FIFA Congress in Kigali. If this was, because I know politics has found its way into even sports a lot, and we saw when there was a renowned Chinese tennis player who had come out and said some things that, and allegations that she made against some leading Chinese politicians, and because of that, there was a boycott of, of having China included in the international matches, or even having matches played in China. There was a boycott, and among other sports, because of issues to do with human rights and things like that. So when you look at Kigali and Rwanda, Rwanda, and the allegations that have been put across against it, with key countries and institutions like the United Nations across the world over its involvement in the support of the M23 rebels who are fighting the government of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And then the world does not have a problem, an international body like FIFA does not have a problem with having a conference of this event of its magnitude taking place in Kigali. It just shows the double standards and how this Western world and their politics and their interests get to take control of the agenda and the issues in the international system. Because you would think with all these allegations, the US has directly pointed fingers and says it does have some proof that Rwanda is allegedly supporting the M23 rebels. We've had France come out and point a finger at Rwanda at the same time. We've also had numerous reports from the United Nations Security Council saying, yes, indeed, there's some substantial proof that Rwanda is supporting, aiding and equipping the M23 rebels in the kind of attacks and atrocities that they are committing in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And yet, with all these allegations, the world still does not have a problem supporting and acting as if it's business as usual. This kind of double standards. Well, if I keep saying, if say Rwanda was Zimbabwe, if Rwanda was another country that these Western countries seem to be having problems with, then this will be a different matter altogether. The amount of sanctions that we could be seeing right now will be so different. So it is this double standard sometimes in the international system, especially from these Western countries, that brings a bit of confusion. And I think they do these things, or some of these decisions they make is just based upon how much and what they stand to gain, and how much of their interest is at threat, or how much of the interest these countries are to their own interest and their own foreign policy. So it's a whole different ball, but I digress for right now. The Herald from Zimbabwe, times to acquire national IDs extended. Okay, Zimbabwe is readying itself for elections, and so there has been some preparations there. The Daily News as well from Zimbabwe. ZANU-PF warns against bribery as tight party primary polls take place. CCZ bemoans grim blackouts. The Newsday from Zimbabwe as well. ZANU-PF activists beat up ZEC staff. Okay. So ZANU-PF activists beat up the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission staff. I wonder why would they do that? Hopefully investigations are taking place and we'll get to know more about that story. The Citizen from Tanzania, where 3 trillion Tanzania shillings additional budget funding will go. The 2023-2024 budget framework points to the government's intention to further improve civil servants' salaries, with a wage bill expected to increase by more than 1 trillion Tanzanian shillings, and up its debt servicing tempo in the next financial year. That's what we have on the front page of the Citizen from Tanzania. The Daily Monitor from Uganda, Makerere to cut intake by over 5,000 students. Okay, let me see if I can get the subtitles and see why this could be so. Now, the first reduction is pending Senate approval on Thursday this week and will take effect next academic year that starts in August, as the country's oldest institution of higher learning seeks to focus on research. Okay, so it is Makerere University streamlining its systems there. Okay, I think a lot of universities, even here in Kenya, I think are taking a similar move, because some of these maybe courses they're doing are not really viable like that. So I know major universities in the country have also cutting down on certain courses that they have been offering, and cutting down on some of the campuses they've opened across the country. So I think even Makerere there is having these reforms to better streamline its services. Very well. We head over to the UK now. The Metro, time for sharp exit. That's what we see on the headline. The I newspaper. Pressure grows on BBC bosses over Lineker climb down. The Mirror as well, the Daily Mirror from the UK. Glitter back in jail. And the Daily Express, has Lineker put a nail in coffin of license fees? So that is what we have in some of those newspapers. So okay, let me look at some sports news. Let me see if I can get us a few. On the back page of the Standard newspaper, Napoli returned to Champions League set for historic season. A quarter-finals of Europe's marquee club competition finally beckoned for Napoli. Only 3 of the 12 teams left in the competition top their domestic leagues. I don't know what that is about, but if you're a football fan, I'm sure you understand that information. Mine is just to deliver. Okay. And what else? Cyclists ride for 500 kilometers for the good and joy of the girl child. 20 riders endure scorching heat to fundraise for girls' education. Tour de Kenya that began in Nairobi ends in Mombasa, raining 5 million Kenya shillings. I think that's really wonderful. And we were having a conversation at a different forum a few days ago, and the argument was because we have several theories that tends to explain different situations and how things happen in the world. And one of the key theories we have is feminism theory that supports equal opportunities and things like that. You understand that? And the conversation was, so much attention has been given to the girl child. When are we going to have such cycling or such activities that goes towards support of our boy child? And so yeah, I think there is that. There seems to be an inequality for those who might not understand the premise and the reason why so much attention has been focused on uplifting and just pulling the girl child to be at level. And that has to do with how our society and especially our cultures have been, especially in prior years, where a lot of attention was given to the boy child in certain communities. Even till date, we see that it is the boy child who will go to school. The girl child will go to school maybe up until about 12 years or 13 years. Before you know it, she's being married off and things like that. So there were some deliberate efforts to ensure that there is a level playing field, and we get to have many of these girls in school and address the issue of early marriages and early parenthood, motherhood, teenage mothers and all that. because when you look at especially a scenario like that, teenage pregnancies, the girls get to have the bitter end of the stick. The boy will go ahead and finish his school. They don't get to be affected. So it is because of all these factors that so a deliberate effort to try and address these issues and highlight the need for girl-child empowerment. But according to statistics and what we've seen the society turn into, these girls have become so empowered that the boy child sometimes do not know what to do with this empowered girl. So it is a conversation that perhaps we'll never hear the end of it, but I would like to see also these events also done in support of the boy child, because we still also have some communities who, boys are not able to go to school because of other cultural reasons. Look at what they're doing in Pokot. You'll find that a lot of these young men who are involved, I doubt if they're girls there who are involved in these cattle rustling activities, they've lacked an opportunity to go to school. So if the government would engage in both, maybe a lot more soft power, and see that opportunities to go to school are created in these areas, and more schools and more awareness is created around issues to do with alternative ways of earning a living, maybe you might win this war against banditry. But a lot of these areas, these young men or these communities don't get the benefit of accessing education, and not much awareness has been done. So there's still imbalance depending on where you're sitting and from which point you're looking at this thing. So all I'm saying is we should have all of these sexes, genders supported, and we see that we're able to go together in this journey of empowerment and the equal opportunities. Yeah, that is all I'm saying. Okay, that was sports news. I don't know how we got to feminism and all that. Now, let me see if I can find something else. All right. With 43 million Kenya shillings in his pocket, Spaniard Campillo basks in Kenya open glory. Local golfers need to go back to the drawing. After only Kibuga made it to the money bracket, Kenyans failed to advance to the coveted stage as 14 others fall short in the annual tournament that took place and ended on Sunday at the Muthaiga Golf Club. So Kenyans didn't do so well. Even the Kenyan who led, I think he came at number 65, which was way over there. So Kenyans need to work hard and improve on their golf skills, so that the next time we're having this event, we also need to be clapping for them. But congratulations to those winners who were able to win these prizes. UEFA Champions League, lack of Man City success in Europe's biggest club tournament weighs heavily on Pep's mind as Leipzig, I know we say Leipzig, but it's a German name, so it's Leipzig, loom. The story is on page 39 on the Daily Nation. I'll not get into the details of that. And maybe I should just leave this just over here, so that we look at quick look at the weather, and then we get into our conversation, because I do have a couple of things that I'd like for us to talk about this morning. So some weather from Africa, and in Johannesburg, it's going to be highs of 26 degrees and lows of 13 degrees, and it's going to be mostly sunny there in Johannesburg. In Abuja, highs of 37 degrees and lows of 22 degrees, and it's going to be mostly sunny as well there. In Abuja and in Nairobi, it's going to be partly cloudy with the highs of 29 degrees Celsius and lows of 17 degrees Celsius. And in Accra, Ghana, it's going to be partly cloudy with highs of 32 degrees Celsius and lows of 26 degrees Celsius. In Dakar, it's going to be clear with 25 degrees Celsius on the high side and 19 degrees Celsius on the low side. And in Luanda, that is in Angola, it's going to be 26 degrees Celsius and partly cloudy. And in Harare, 17 degrees Celsius, it's going to be mostly cloudy there in Harare. And let me see where else. In Addis Ababa, it's going to be 14 degrees Celsius, partly cloudy there. And we do also have several weather conditions across the world. The US is still struggling with its weather pattern, and several inches of snow already reported in New York and New England there. Usually by now they're in spring. They're supposed to have forgotten about winter towards mid-February, but climatic changes, and this is what you get when you refuse to address the issue of climate change. This is exactly what you get. And the new atmospheric river to Hama, California also. And, blizzard of 93 degrees, remembering the storm of the century. That is also happening there. And of course, Cyclone Freddy likely to go down as record-setting storm that hit parts of southern Africa. So I want to believe that you are now up to date with the latest headlines and a bit of sports and some weather conditions. So depending on where you are, just dress appropriately and enjoy the weather that you have in the different cities across Africa and indeed and across the world. So now let's get into what I love to do, and that is to talk about the current affairs. And we start with a visit by the First Lady of the U.S. that is expected to happen in the continent of Africa, and the U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris plans to visit 3 African states in what will be her first trip to the continent since she took office more than 2 years ago. Ms. Harris' visits to Ghana, Tanzania and Zambia from 25th of March to 2nd of April will focus on efforts to expand access to the digital economy, support climate adaptation and resilience, and strengthening business ties and investment, her office said in a statement. So they did not give so much details, but of course they have outlined some of the things that she's expected to do while she makes this visit in these 3 countries, that is in Ghana, Tanzania and in Zambia. And the visit, as I've said, there is expected to start on the 25th of March, going up until the 2nd of April. And so the things they want to look at is the expansion, to expand the access to digital economy, to support climate adaptation and resilience, and strengthen business ties and investment. And when you look at all this, however titles they give these agendas or some of the things that she's coming to do here in Africa, it is in line. Remember, the U.S. gave about how many billions? Over 50 billion US dollars of funding to Africa that is expected to be spread to be handed over or to be given in a span of 3 years, and this is supposed to go to different sectors in the continent. So when you see her coming here, it's just part of that. And some of these things that she's mentioning, that the U.S. Is going to collaborate with some of these African countries, is in line with first of all, that money was given, and of course, the bottom line is the U.S. foreign policy. And it will be interesting to see the countries that they choose to go, because they don't randomly sit and look at the map of Africa and decide, okay, fine, I think we need to go to Tanzania. The next time, maybe Liberia. No, they are very strategic in how they plan these visits, the intention as to why they pick these countries, and what the agenda they want to drive in these particular countries, and what they stand to gain. And if at all they feel that their interest perhaps is being threatened by another force, like we have been saying, and all these different countries having their senior officials visit Africa, and then they intensify their visit and a build-up of better relations with this country. So that is just what the U.S. is saying. So as much as we want to use this very colorful language and wonderful pointers as to what Kamala Harris is coming to do in the name of expanding access to the digital economy and supporting climate adaptation and resilience and all these wonderful things as the reason why she's coming to Africa, and specifically these countries she's choosing to visit. The bottom line is the U.S. foreign policy is at play here, and whatever she's coming to do has to, the end of the day, fulfill or meet the expectation of what they have set out as the U.S. about their foreign policy in Africa. So she's just coming to ensure that that is in order. And for them to have chosen these 3 countries, there's a reason for that, because of certain interest that goes to serve the U.S. and its agenda in Africa. Okay? So And when you look at these countries also, China has been very present, and so it's just a way of reinforcing their dominance and reinforcing their presence in these countries and among other countries. It's interesting because we just had another visit by the First Lady of the US, was it not? I think she came to Kenya also, and few other African. I think she made a trip in 4 countries, if I'm not wrong. I could be wrong. I've probably forgotten, but I think it was 4 countries she came. Dr. Jill Biden, pardon me, was here just a few days ago, and she made a similar visit. And before that, we saw the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Before that, we saw the Japanese side also make a visit. Before that, we saw. So you can see the obsession these countries have with Africa, and that is because of the jostling of power and basically the power struggle there in the international system. But more so, they're doing this because they feel having a dominant power from these other countries in a specific country is really threatening their interest, and that's why you see now the attention has shifted, and everybody is just trying to cement their space in the African continent, and we're just here, hoping that a miracle will happen and somehow we'll do better as a continent, instead of just sitting down and asking ourselves, what is it that these people are coming here to do, and why is Africa very important for them, and how can we leverage this attention that we are getting in strengthening our ties, but also making sure we have an upper hand in how we operate and how we posture ourselves in the international system. No, we don't ask that. That's not what we go for, but instead, they will come, we'll give them a red carpet, and then we'll pull our children from schools, we'll have them dancing at the airport, to welcome our visitors, and then we'll have a few of our citizens standing by the road and waving for them. Very stupid. Because I've never seen any of my presidents, the ones we've had in my lifetime, when they visit the US or they visit these other countries in the West, if these people do these same things, these kinds of ridiculous welcoming parades for them. I've not seen that. Maybe just a flower bouquet will be offered. That's enough, okay? On a Monday afternoon, you find children who are supposed to be in school have been pulled out of class, have been lined up at the airport because so-and-so is visiting town. Our roads will be closed, we will be inconvenienced. It's just a ridiculousness. I don't know. If they want to see our cultural dances, we have the Bomas of Kenya. After they're done with part of the official visit, they could visit these areas that we have these cultural activities and our tourist attraction centers, and have them entertained and have them enjoy what we have to offer as far as tourism and our culture and our food and all that is concerned. But this ridiculousness has to stop. So anyway, it will be another opportunity for us to exhibit that ridiculousness in Tanzania, in Zambia, and Ghana. Trust you, they will do that. And then after that, the US will do what it needs to do. The US will accomplish its foreign policy, and Kamala Harris will go back. They'll go back, sit down and see, all right, so Jill Biden, you visited so-and-so country. So what is it that you did there, and how do you think, our foreign policy is working there? And then the next person, and then the next person, and then they strategize again. And the next thing you know, they're sending another senior official to come and visit us, and for us to dance for them. And before you know it, the agenda is running so well and good. Let's just move on and go to other sad news in Nigeria, because now at least 30 people are reported to have been killed in northwestern Nigeria following several attacks by armed gangs. Fierce fighting took place over the weekend between gunmen and volunteers who had joined self-defense groups to protect villages in Katsina State. In neighboring Kaduna State, the authorities have imposed an overnight curfew after villagers were killed in Ungwan Waki community. Attacks by criminal gangs have remained a major threat in North-West despite the heavy deployment of security forces. The Nigerian government has been strongly criticized for failing to stop the insecurity. Well, that is not new. We've seen that happening, and I doubt right now Buhari can even do anything he checked out long time ago, based on how he's been responding and dealing with these issues or lack thereof. So hopefully Nigerians can just be patient and wait for the new administration after all these court cases have been cleared and there's a clear way of moving forward as Nigeria. And then after that, maybe the new administration will take the issue of security in Nigeria a bit more seriously and have proper strategies in place that will effectively address the issue of insecurity. So that is just my hope, and I think the hope of many Nigerians, because the current administration has been criticized, has been called out, has been all manner of things, and a lot of responses there have been knee-jerked. They've not been effective at all, because usually it's very reactive. There's no proper. Sometimes I wonder if. And I know if Nigeria has proper, intelligence and how they collect this intelligence and how they fail to act on this intelligence. I keep referring to my country here in Kenya. There was a period where there was an increase in Al-Shabaab attacks, and we could see they really, they really wanted to leave a mark in this country as far as these extremist activities are concerned. So while they were doing that, the Kenyan intelligence and the Kenyan security sector went into back to the drawing board, and they increased their surveillance system and they increased their intelligence collecting system, and they beefed up. Every now and then we hear of attacks, every now and then, but there's constant in between, not as in the magnitude that it used to be, or it could have gone to if the government did not quickly apprehend the situation. And so sometimes, every now and then, what you see in the news is a cache of firearms, and all these things have been arrested, have been recovered, and some people have been arrested after a tip-off or after an intelligence operation. So the government is always putting certain things and certain areas and certain people under radar, and you can see that they really heightened their intelligence, so they're able to be proactive. They're able to proactive, not stand here after 43 people have been murdered, and then we hear, the government sending condolences, as we know President Buhari has been doing, and then vowing to do whatever. We have an issue with bandit attack, but I think if, we have a clear will to deal with that, I think we're going to deal with that, and I've seen the government is dealing with that. There has been debates on how the methods it's implementing. That is, a conversation for another time, but we've seen it's trying to work out and to find a solution for that problem that is causing a lot of, loss in that region in Kenya. But we're seeing something is being done. That's what I'm saying. But I'd like to see some results, not just something is being done. But with Nigeria, it is just, everything has just gone off rail as far as the security is concerned, and the government seems to be very helpless and clueless even. So the intelligence there and their surveillance system and how they get and interpret and implement intelligence information, has been lacking in many fronts. And so Nigerians have been left by themselves to form even these vigilante groups to try and fight against these extremist groups and other groups that are causing insecurity, because the government is not able to guarantee that. So, well, President Buhari's term has ended, or rather is coming to an end. Well, it has ended up until May. That's when I think they will have a handing over ceremony, their inauguration for the next president. And so there's nothing much I'm personally expecting President Buhari to do that he's not been able to do the last 8 years. Nothing much, really. It just continues to expose the ineptness. It just continues to expose the lack of will to do something. And it continues to expose a government that is really rudderless when it comes to just having control of its security operators. So my hope is that the next administration will act differently and will do differently to ensure the lives and the properties of the people of Nigeria are to be, protected by all means possible. So that is just my wish, but I'll be here. to report to you and to keep in check on what the new administration will be doing in terms of handling that very important issues that is now facing Nigerians. And now still staying with Nigeria, I know the major headlines there, money, banks to comply with the court decision to allow the old and new Naira notes run concurrently until the 31st of December. In February, some state governors took the federal government to the Apex Court, challenging the implementation of a 10th February deadline to phase out the notes. Over the past 2 months, Nigerians have been experiencing long queues at the banking halls and cash machines, with many unable to access the new banknotes. It led to protests in some parts of the country. President Buhari on the 16th of February ordered CBN to recirculate the old 200 Naira notes only until the 10th of April, insisting that old 500 and 1,000 Naira notes were no longer legal tenders. But the Supreme Court's judgment overruled this directive on Monday. The presidency denied public sentiments that he had instructed the CBN governor and the Attorney General to disobey the court orders. Now, the directive of the president following the meeting of the Council of State is that the bank must make available for circulation all the money that is needed, and nothing has happened to change that position, he said in a statement. Last October, the central bank redesigned the higher banknotes to combat counterfeiting, cash hoarding, and insecurity fueled by kidnaps for ransom. Yeah. I don't know why they're forgetting that it was also an electioneering period. And according to politicians, this seems to be a very targeted move for those who have hoarded the monies in the house. And, the reason, also one of the reasons why, of course, cash hoarding, because it was discovered, according to the Central Bank of Nigeria, that over 85% of the Nigerian money cannot be traced back to the formal financial institutions, the banks and others. And so the government felt it was a good move to try to rein in and to be accountable for all the money circulation in Nigeria, to introduce this new note to address the issue of cash hoarding and counterfeiting and all these things. But I think it is the timing of it all that was suspect. They had all these years to do that, or they would have had enough time to do that in a more politically, not a very charged political environment, after the elections. But instead they chose to do it at a place where the country was politically charged. So any move that the government was making, or under this administration, was going to be seen as a political move, whether it was for the good of the country or not. So as much as this move truly can go a long way in addressing some of these issues as far as the Nigerian currency is concerned, but also it is the timing of it and when they chose to do this. Maybe the central bank would have, out of wisdom, did this after elections are done, the winner is clear, the country has settled down, and now you go ahead and make these announcements or make these changes. By the time you chose to do it, and then you choose to bring in new notes, these new notes are not enough. So the chaos, you find that people have to pay money for them to get their money. I guess you have to give bribe for you to get the new notes. So it has created a lot of chaos, a lot of panic, a lot of insecurity now, and corruption even in Nigeria. So it was just off. The timing and the implementation and the strategy was just horrible. And maybe Central Bank of Nigeria, you should be different. And the central bank should be independent. I know it's working under the government, and it's a very important institution in a country, and it should have very close working relationship with the government, with the what do you call it? We have the judiciary, we have parliament, with executive, right? But it should be independent, and the financial decision it makes, it should be independent. It should not have this level of influence from any arm of the government. Central bank of any country should be independent, and they should be making announcements and things that affect the markets or the economy of the country based on data, based on professionalism, the people there that economists there that look at the trends and look at the world and see the economic status in their countries and see where they stand in their own country as far as what they have, and then make decisions or advise the president in that regard, in that area. So the executive should not be meddling in the issues at the central bank of any country. So the fact that there were some accusations that there's a possibility that President Buhari was accused of maybe meddling in how these decisions were being made in terms of distributing these new notes, and the president said, no, I did not. I did not. The directive of the president following the meeting of the Council of State is that the bank must make available for circulation all the money that is needed, and nothing has happened to change that position. So they're saying President Buhari's office did not, interfere in any way by these court orders or by these new directives. So he's absolving himself from this mess. But this is a mess that Nigerians, and specifically the central bank, should show some leadership and take control of this financial sector, and just make sure that these new banks are now, the new bills are now available. So now apparently the old bills will be in circulation until the end of the year. So what was the rush? Why did you make Nigerians suffer the way they did? I thought you said you had recovered all the old notes and only about 30% was still in circulation. So what was the rush? So if you've done so much to recover much of that old bills, but now we have to have an extension until the end of the year. So what was the rush? Did you not do a proper survey? Did you not see how this was going to affect and how this was going to work out? Did you not have the information before you came out to make these statements and introduce these new changes? Should have looked at, what you needed to look at and see, do you even have enough notes that should be put out for circulation? Nigerians have suffered. The last 2 months or so, it has been hectic for most Nigerians who have not even been able to access their monies. So now you're coming out after the elections are done. Well, we still have the results of that election have been challenged in court, and the governor's elections are coming up on the 18th, I think 3 days from now. And now you're saying, you know what, it's fine. Because of the court ruling, it's fine. So let's just have these new notes and the old ones just, circulate in the economy until the end of the year. And I think you'll phase them out slowly by slowly. You should have given enough time. You should have given maybe even up to 6 months, knowing that maybe you did not even have enough of the new currency, and be proactive and not create panic in the manner in which you created, and making people's lives very difficult in the manner in which you did, and bring out the confusion that created another insecurity there in Nigeria. So I don't know. Sorry. So anyway, let's just move on from that story and head over to Guinea. And the Guinean Ministry of Justice on Sunday demanded explanation for the arrest of 2 civilian society activists, likely to call into question an attempt to resume the broken dialogue between the opposition and the ruling junta. The Ministry of Justice suggests in a press release that the gendarmes arrested the 2 men outside the procedures. Abdul Sako and Ismail Diallo were arrested on Saturday for undisclosed reasons and then released. Both are part of organizations calling for a rapid return of civilians in the helm of this military-ruled country since September 2021. The military agreed, under pressure from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, to give way to elected civilians by the end of 2024. The time to carry out deep reforms, they say. Abdul Sako, in particular, is a well-known figure, a member of the Forces Vives, a coalition of the main parties, unions and organizations in opposition to the junta. The opposition accuses the junta of confiscating power and silencing any dissenting voices through arrests of personalities and judicial inquiries. It calls for real dialogue. Abdul Sako and Ismail Diallo were arrested when the junta and the opposition seemed to be attempting to regain contact. The Forces Vives have just postponed demonstrations against the junta to, they say, give a chance to mediation by the religious authorities. In a country accustomed to political violence, a previous day of mobilization in mid-February had led to clashes which left 3 dead. The junta has threatened to ban the main parties, which are already virtually inactive. A meeting between Forces Vives, government and religion is expected. It was meant to be happening yesterday, but I think it did not happen. I would have told you about it. And, well, I'm not surprised. The Mali junta, I think they will stay there for as long as they wish to stay there. And just anchoring to the conversation I was having with you here about Sudan and the dangers of having a military overstay its rule in power, is that another section of military men maybe are just watching and seeing how this country is being run, and they're not happy about it. And there are others who could also be loyal to the former president, who are also watching and seeing how matters are being run, and they're not very happy about it. So the dangers of that is the overstay in power by this military may just be creating other problems that may lead to further instability in Mali. So these cases are all similar, and I'm not surprised. Another story that I'd like for us to quickly look at, as our time is slowly running out, from Ethiopia. And rebuilding schools and hospitals is the #1 priority in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region after 2 years of brutal conflict. According to US-based charity Save the Children, 4 months since the federal government and the Tigray People's Liberation Front TPLF signed a peace deal, the situation remains dire. And Janti Soripto, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Save the Children US, said this after a trip to the region, which remained largely cut off from the world during the fighting marked by numerous atrocities that spilled over into neighboring Afar and Amara regions. Now, the brutal civil war in northern Ethiopia may have killed as many as 600,000 people, making it one of the world's deadliest conflicts of recent times. Between June and October 2022 alone, almost 200 children under the age of 5 died of starvation in 14 hospitals across Tigray region. According to data collected by local doctors and researchers, there were several more casualties of the conflict, including millions of displaced people, as efforts to rebuild and move on from the ugly recent past emerge. Sopto reiterates that education and healthcare must be the focus. We know that the fighting broke out in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region in November 2020 after Addis accused Tigrayan fighters of attacking the federal army, with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed deploying troops to the region. Fighting spread across the neighboring Amara and this region. But I know you already know the history of that, but I want us to just pay attention for a few minutes on the rebuilding of schools, hospitals as a top priority there for the Ethiopian government, and now these other bodies that are coming in to try and help, rebuild this part. Let me just read a statement from this, the head of Save the Children in US. In Mekele, you see a resumption of normal life. There are restaurants, there is business, there is a market, there are commercial activities, shops are open. I'm sure supplies are not completely fulfilled, but in the cities you suddenly see that resumption, which is good. But as I said, 80 to 90% of the healthcare infrastructure and schools are damaged or completely destroyed, and that is problematic. So they're saying the effect of that 2-year war has had devastating effects on the health sector, and education sector in this region. So now rebuilding of these schools and hospitals is something that, according to this institution, must be given priority. And now it just boils down to, I think, a key question. Was it even necessary? Was it necessary to engage in this magnitude of destruction of your own country? Government forces, TPLF forces, was it necessary to engage in this amount of destruction of your own lives, the things that affect you? And now, the monies that could be channeled in other things that you really, really need has to be channeled to rebuild back what you all destroyed. Make that make sense to me. This was, the end of the day, the price tags is ridiculous. And we can't afford that. We are in the third world. We can't afford. We don't even have enough money, Ethiopia. You don't have enough even to run your own budget. And now the little that you have that should be going to other sectors and improving the lives of Ethiopians, and now has to come back and help rebuild the schools, the health sectors, and I'm sure among other things that were destroyed, that were intentionally destroyed. And for what? Who has gained in this war? Who has? Who gained? It's a loss, and this is unfortunate. If we can avoid this level of conflict and physical engagement, I think the better. Because the price tag of war is very expensive. We can't afford it. Russia is invading Ukraine. Even with the invasion and destruction, Ukraine is still able to send us fertilizers. Russia is still able to run its operations elsewhere. We know its economy has been hit because of the sanctions that have been made in the international financial system. And banks in Russia cannot operate in the international system. Visa and all these things, they're unable to access these services, so that really has hampered the country. But still they're able to sustain it. They can afford it. They can afford to sustain a conflict. We can't. We are poor. We can't. So the resources that are meant to go and improve on other things and build other things now have to be redirected to rebuild things that you destroyed. That shouldn't be the case. So I'm just hoping that Ethiopia will be a good case study on why not to go to war, especially with yourself. Because Ethiopia was fighting within itself until it invited also Eritrea to join in the spoils of war. The government of Ethiopia invited. I wouldn't say allegedly, because that information is out there. And Isaias Afwerki, I told you what he said a couple of weeks ago. Said, yeah, his soldiers were there. So this should be a good case study as to why we should not be going to these mindless wars that we fight. There are other options of resolving conflict, of resolving disagreements, of addressing the issues that we feel we are aggrieved in a way that it will not be detrimental and hurt us. Because at the end of the day, the TPLF was not even fighting to leave Ethiopia. The TPLF was fighting for whatever it felt it was wrong, or the lack of inclusion, or these other things. And that was not the right move. And the Ethiopian government response to that was also not right. Two wrongs don't make a right. Okay? So now you're done fighting. Now you have to rebuild yourself. It will take years upon years to rebuild this region, for it to come back to what it used to be. It will take years. And then you factor in the psychological effect, the trauma that people are suffering. It's a lot. The price tag of war is just too much. So I'll just hope that other countries that are also thinking of making these kinds of move will think twice and maybe explore other ways of addressing the issues that they're facing within their countries before they result into having a physical confrontation, because nobody wins in such situations now. And Ethiopia has to engage now in rebuilding schools and hospitals. It's ridiculous that they destroyed, that the government side destroyed, the TPLF side destroyed. And for what? It's ridiculous. There are better ways of engaging, especially if it's an interstate. There's a better way of engaging within ourselves, even with our neighbors or other countries. There are better ways of resolving, means of resolving conflict. And physical aggression should be the last result. And unless somebody is confronting you and you have the right to defend yourself in such a situation, but if you could avoid that, the better for you, okay? And I know the government of Ethiopia says it was provoked by the attack the TPLF had on its base and its forces, so it forced the government to respond in the manner in which it responded. I don't know. For my part, I've always felt this was overdone. This was a political problem, and this should have had a political solution. Instead, a political problem went to morph into a military solution, and at the end of the day, this is what you get. Quite unfortunate. Thank you so much for your time this morning. I'll see you later here in the afternoon with some news, also some story and information I want to share from you from Ethiopia. I don't know if you know, there are actually Israelites who have their roots in Ethiopia, and now they're facing a bit of racism in Israel. So we'll trace back these Jews of Ethiopian origin, and I have so much exciting information to share with you, and I hope we shall all learn together in the afternoon. Thank you so much. So that will be 3 p.m. East African time. I'll see you then. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.